Today we're doing our first stream back on YouTube. We're hosting it on StreamYard this time, which is
It's an alternative to Google Hangouts, which is about as easy to use. Hence why we're streaming again. Well, that's not the only reason we're streaming, but yeah, probably the bigger one.
I was wondering why I was echoing. I have it open in another tab. Okay, we're good now.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
me
no, it was echoing for a different reason. I had the live stream on YouTube open on another tab.
Yeah, I don't know about StreamYard. I mean, I like it, but I was gonna say if I'm fucking roboting again, then it might just be a bad platform. I mean, I was cutting off throughout the Walter Block stream. I almost couldn't even do the stream with Kyle Reese, Blooded the Brave, because yeah, that freaking throughout that whole stream, I basically nobody could hear me. I was roboting incoherently. So I'm glad it's working now, though, at least for the moment.
Well, that was weird because with the Furry Raider stream, like I don't remember you roboting or anyone roboting pretty hard.
Yeah, to be fair, that was a successful StreamYard stream. But I suppose we could get into, what we wanted to talk about at first.
Yeah.
The reason we started streaming again.
Yeah, so we're making a lot of progress on the FNet project, which we, by the way, have renamed to Meshworks. So we're making a lot of progress in the Meshworks project. We recently came across another project that's doing something incredibly similar and has advanced our programming requirements by several months. So that, of course, is very, very good. That said, we're coming to the point where we are going to need some funding. So any donations you can provide via super chats would be greatly appreciated.
No, and I'm being serious about we're being serious about that. I mean, about our need for funds as well, because we're also getting involved in we're starting to conceptualize and speculate with more subversive projects as well. And like I even went out and I'm not gonna say any more because I got a gray market job basically, so
Glorious.
it's not any it's not a wage cut position either. I'm a welder's assistant, so
You probably said too much.
no, I didn't, because that doesn't tell anyone where I work or where I work.
Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, any support you can provide is going to be greatly appreciated. Most importantly, I did manage to get Google Pay working, so all of the donations will go to me. Anyways, you want to talk about a discussion you had on your server earlier today?
Oh yeah, I wanted to bring this up because it was funny. It's not really a news topic, but I thought that it was hilarious and it would probably lighten the mood of the stream. So basically, somebody posted this meme. Like, this is how this debate got started. Well, I suppose it actually probably goes back a bit farther than this because like, as a lot of you guys remember and probably saw on the Back Alley Philosophy channel. We did a debate about a month ago, Filthy and I, on the side of the agorist position and the left Rothbardian position, basically, against Hoppianism, which was being defended by not Hoppa, I meant Hoplu and Atomic. And we were supposed to have a follow-up to that debate about agorist methodology and sort of alliance for the libertarian left type market anarchism. And that never happened because Hoplu, he's been busy since then, but also Atomic left the internet. So when we do have that debate, it's probably going to be with Hoplu and Thelma, which I can't imagine that a lot of people would know who Thelma is, considering he doesn't make content and he mostly posts, he just hangs out on Discord. But he's another floofer, kind of like myself, except he's made quite a few hot takes today, and I don't have any problem with him. In fact, he's an admin on my server, but just holy. We probably just got to show the exchange that we had today, which basically the position we got into arguing about was the efficiency of business hierarchy. I don't know if you're showing it on screen or.
I'm not. I thought you were going to screen share it.
Oh, okay. I suppose that I could pull it up on Discord here. I was kind of expecting you to, but all right.
Yeah, you're showing me some of the screen shares, and I know I'm going to be getting a lot of crap from Tama later today about this. Basically gossiping about this behind his
We're not gossiping behind his back. We're talking about it on stream. I just thought that it was fun. Like I said, this is hilarious, and I think now you can see why I thought this was so funny.
Yeah, everyone should be able to see it now.
But these are the two main reasons I presented for why hierarchical business, that being business which has internally different positions of management, is inherently inefficient, and why businesses can't really scale to being past a certain size, which is going to depend on the economy that it operates within and the industry that it trades in. But basically, hierarchical businesses can't scale, and two, because of the different layers of management, information doesn't communicate properly. Like these businesses can't internalize the information, which would be necessary for them to make proper economic calculation. And there's precedent, both Mises and Rothbard have made this exact same argument pretty much verbatim. So this isn't even remotely controversial position in Austrian methodology. But because I brought up this point, he says, quote, "You understand business about as much as Marx does," end quote.
I mean, you cited a lot more economic points that are actually relevant and factual than Marx does, so that it immediately puts you a step above Marx.
Well, what I said was almost verbatim exactly what Murray Rothbard said back in 1966, and in his essay called "Left, Right, and the Modern." It was Left, Right, and fuck, I don't remember the title off the top of my head. But if you look up Murray Rothbard Left versus Right, you'll find the article I'm talking about on Mises. But yeah, essentially, I'm just making the Austrian argument more consistently than the Hoppians are. Big oof. But
I think
I think that's going to be the part that gets them the most pissed off, if they get pissed off about us talking about it.
That's going to be almost certainly it. He's going to make accusations about, or trying to ask me to make your argument for you. And almost certainly they're going to say, "What the hell, heretic?" I'm kind of anticipating it at this point.
If anything, I would just like to finally do part 2 of that debate.
Yeah, I mean, my thinking is that a hierarchical firm, there are advantages, but there are significant disadvantages. The economy of scale and diseconomy of scale work on a curve, and that you will be able to increase efficiency and increase output as you expand, but the amount of gains you're going to get are going to tail off until you start to lose it. Then what
Yeah,
ends up happening is
exactly.
that, and then what ends up happening is that once you reach that point, the amount of inputs required to create an output increase exponentially. That is when you get to the diseconomy of scale. That's when mismanagement becomes more difficult. Managers have a lot harder time managing significantly larger workforces. You end up with over bureaucratization where your managers need managers and those managers need managers. And
Right.
it's just it's also going to be very easy for lazy, incompetent, and otherwise non-productive people and even non-productive projects to become embedded and even entrenched within the organization.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, hierarchical firms could probably exist in a stateless society within certain economies of scale, but economies of scale inevitably become diseconomies of scale because they start internalizing greater costs than they profit from. You
And there's
know,
also
for example, say if a firm manages to temporarily gain a majority share for a certain town, well, in order to continue trading, they have to spend more in transportation and selling their goods and speculating with outside markets. So they begin having to essentially spend more than they can sustain themselves with.
yeah, there's also the Peter principle, where people who are competent are promoted outside of their competency. There's all sorts of reasons why diseconomies of scale can function. And I think what's going on is what Roderick T. Long has pointed out in one of his lectures, or at least multiple of his lectures, because I'm hearing him making the same points multiple times, is that a lot of libertarians, especially a lot of so called right libertarians, often feel compelled to defend big business because, after all, a lot of these socialists, a lot of these authoritarians attack big business as well. And it's difficult for people to conceive that people that they disagree with politically would even have a point in a different respect. So if these bad people are attacking this thing, then this thing that they're attacking must be a good thing, even though that's not necessarily the case. Now, obviously, as Esso pointed out before, there is nothing wrong with a hierarchical business. There's a perfect they definitely are going to have a place in a voluntary society. I don't think anyone is arguing that. It's just that the kind of them being as dominant as they are is not necessarily going to be the case, especially since the kind of corporatist pseudo market economy that we have today very much favors the hierarchical business model and makes it difficult, if not impossible, for alternative forms of economic organization to come about.
Yeah, I would argue personally that I think speculative networking is the most competitive model, and I think FNet's kind of demonstrated that, considering that FNet is the way that we've financed the project and created it, is in the model of a speculative network. So, but that time will tell as to whether or not I'm right, even though I'm pretty sure that I am.
Have you heard of a guy named Captain Cool '07?
I have not.
Yeah,
Or
someone in the chat is just asking us to make a reply video to him.
oh, we'll look him up after the stream. But okay. So moving on from this subject. Have you seen this fucking video from this climate protest called "The Burning Earth"? You
You
have to see this in order to believe it. It is the like people throw around the term clown world a bit much, but I think nobody would disagree that it's appropriate here.
Yeah, go ahead and share
I'm pulling it up right now.
it.
Um, we'll play it
You
again with some sound, and the post is insane asylum outside or climate change protest. Look
well,
at this shit. What the hell are they doing? I
I
just
mean, I was telling you before that when I was at the climate strike in San Antonio, I saw like these three boomer women who are probably government school teachers just running around like children, poking each other with these like little foam or these little foam balls. It was like some kind of really dumbass game of freeze tag. I was standing there agape for like a minute before I realized, like, wait a minute, I should get this on video. And you can see at least the tail end of it on my video on the climate strike. It's was bizarre, but this is like the boomer women, except there's like 30 of them.
Yeah, and they're doing. People in the comments are saying it's interpretive dance, but I don't even know. Like, I don't even know if you can call it that. Like, you saw the look on their face. It looks like it's some sort of involuntary spasm. If I were to give my non-expert opinion, but no, if you look at the hysteria going on with the climate narrative right now, it's understandable why people are behaving that way in regards to this issue. It's because at this point, I mean, yeah, they pretty much have lost it.
It's it's gotten so crazy that even the UN scientists are saying, "Calm down, guys."
Well, that's the thing. From their perspective in the narrative, which they're being presented and expected to internalize, they're basically being told, "Yeah, you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it." So people behaving this way is com- completely understandable if you look at it from that perspective. I
I
mean,
guess,
I
but I
don't know
mean,
if
like,
I'd ever do that, but if I was going to die, if I knew or I thought I was going to die, I'd sort of internalized that idea, and there was nothing I could do about it. I don't know if I could be very content.
yeah, but you saw like the three or four people on stilts.
Yeah, well, it was one guy, and I don't know what the fuck was up with that. Just
I'm pretty sure it was three guys, but what was I don't know how many people have go around to a climate orgy on stilts
like
on their bucket list.
that Cirque de la Ville outside. Like, I don't know what they're doing. And then there was that girl in the beginning who I don't know what the hell that was, like praying just out of nowhere, like getting on her knees and like bowing to something.
Pray to Trump. That's probably what she's doing. She's praying to Trump. Oh, great orange man, please save the environment.
Oh man. That's probably something if you want them to stop being so hysterical, which I mean, it's entertaining, but really, this isn't going to lead to anything good. But if you want them to stop being hysterical, as I've argued, you should probably point out the sort of agorist alternative, which
Yep.
whether or not you actually are skeptical of the sort of the climate pseudoscience is kind of irrelevant because in conclusion, because it undermines petrodollar recycling innovations and networks of trade which subvert the state established oil cartels, um, would work in a libertarian interest because it would undermine petrodollar recycling and therefore it would undermine central banking.
Yeah, I mean, I've told you guys before that I had a good amount of success at the climate strike telling people about agorism as a form of denying funding to the world's largest polluter. a lot of them are like very receptive to that, and you can even hear it in some of the rhetoric that the organizers were using, that we need to network, we got to get together with our communities to solve problems, which are very nice sounding platitudes, but Agarism at least permits for more specific actionable
Yeah,
steps.
well, that's a euphemism for have the government create this giant carbon rationing scheme. But Agora, that's another reason why it would be very easy to sell Agorism to these people, because that's literally just what Agorism is. Like, that's not like, you could use that exact same phrasing to describe agorism, and it would not be inaccurate even slightly. It's not a euphemism. That's actually what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's no wonder why people, particularly the people who are deeply involved in these climate protests, are so receptive to agorism.
yeah, and I even talked to one person like that. Oh, I don't know what race he was. Like, just brown skinned guy. I don't know if that was on camera, but he was talking to me about how he himself was growing fruits and vegetables in his own garden. And I was just like, well, well, damn, keep at it, bro. Yeah, just do that. Sell it to other people. Encourage other people to make their own gardens. Make
So
money.
sell it to people for Bitcoin.
Yeah,
No, don't use Bitcoin. Bitcoin's awful. Use Litecoin or Dash. Those are going to be the cryptocurrencies of the future.
most likely. But anyways, you mentioned before that Petrodollar Recycling. I caught one news story like 5 days ago that I think's gotten slipping under the radar, but I think is going to be very important. And that is Russia's largest oil company is ditching the dollar in new oil deals.
Oh yeah, you linked that, and we were gonna, you said we were gonna talk about that. So yeah, I saw that, and it just sort of, goes further into the. It doesn't surprise me that a Russian oil company is doing it, because yeah, a lot of these areas where Russia has been able to control the supply of oil, particularly the Gulf states, are being antagonized heavily by the United States.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it would serve their interest to an extent to antagonize the United States in this regard. So, but um, yeah, certainly, I think we're seeing a greater amount of. You're echoing really badly, but yeah, I think we've seen consistently, like in India, they're not trading um for US dollars on the oil market. China created the petro yuan, which is a gold backed fiat currency they're using specifically to trade for oil. The European Union itself um, has essentially argued for a couple of different countries, they're no longer trading with the US dollar for their oil, or have expressed uncertainty about the US dollar's future as a fiat currency to be traded for oil. So I find that to be very interesting, just like you. Okay, I'm done.
All right. So what's going on more specifically is that Rosneft, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, has decided to change its default currency for all exports of crude oil to the euro. So this is something very similar to what Saddam Hussein was trying to do in 1999, prior to Operation Iraqi Freedom, and the Bush administration decided to bring democracy to Iraq. Well, yeah, that's happening right now. The difference is that Russia is a significantly larger economy, a significantly larger military, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to bring democracy to Russia, as stated earlier. Of course, I mean, I think the overwhelming majority of you understand how petrodollar recycling works. basically just the use of the dollar as the main way that the price of oil is valued encourages countries to maintain a supply of dollars. And when they have to maintain a supply of dollars as a prerequisite to being able to buy and sell oil, a commodity that everyone wants, then that artificially increases the demand for dollars. Thus, no one area has a oversupply of dollars, thus reducing preventing inflation, at least in the domestic markets. So basically, the reason that we don't have hyperinflation already, despite the overwhelmingly massive supply of dollars in the world, is because of the petrodollar, and this is what makes the U.S. government so damn interested in the Middle East and so damn interested in oil. I mean, the slogan during the Iraq wars and to a lesser extent the Afghan wars by anti-war protesters was "No blood for oil." Well, they were only half right. It was never about oil. It was about how people pay for oil.
Yeah, and that's a very common misrepresentation you'll hear from that was a controlled opposition narrative at the time was, oh, look at Halliburton. They're just the US government just wants to secure more oil for the US population. And this led to an interesting exchange which happened. I happened to be in the room to hear it. I think it was the September 24th broadcast. You're echoing again.
Freaking hell.
But yeah, but I think it was the September 24th broadcast of Sean Hannity, because I've mentioned before I live with boomers, so usually that's on when I'm coming out to come get some food or something, um, in sort of the general living area, because our kitchen is connected to it. But anyway, um, so they were watching Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity made a Freudian slip, which was pretty major. And I'm planning on doing a news segment about this or using this clip in some way in a future video. But basically, what he said, I don't have the exact quote. I had it written down and I gave it to Filthy. Actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and find the exact quote right now. Okay, he's the exact quote that he said was, "For the first time in 75 years, the mob will never tell you this in the media, but we are now a net exporter of energy and are completely energy independent, which, by the way, it's time to send Washington the message. That means the Strait of Hormuz are less strategically, geopolitically important than they've ever been to this country. What happens in the Middle East, we don't necessarily need to get involved in entanglements that we otherwise would have been in the past." So basically, the point that he was trying to make was he was trying to reinforce that controlled opposition narrative that oh well, yeah, now you can't even argue that foreign policies about oil anymore because we're a net exporter of oil, which is dubiously true in the first place. But uh, the fact of the matter is he just unwittingly admitted that U.S. foreign policy is largely influenced by oil trade. In
And of course, you can see the even at the time the "no blood for oil" argument was ridiculous because uh, what was it? Anwar, a wildlife preserve in Alaska, was proven to have massive oil reserves, and for some reason, the same people, or rather politicians, were absolutely refused to even consider allowing drilling there because obviously oil drilling is something that the government is in a position to allow or deny. But that's beside the point. It's ridiculous. It's just you could see the hypocrisy in real time. Not that the government particularly cares about hypocrisy, but it definitely shows that what they say is completely different to what their actual motives and what their actual beliefs are.
All
I don't know.
right.
Is there much more to say about this?
Not really. So what do you? Should we talk about deficits next, or should we start talking about China?
Let's go into China because, I mean, there's quite a bit to talk about on that subject. Most importantly, or not really most importantly, but most relevantly, like this is kind of making its rounds, is I'm pretty sure you've heard about the Hearthstone competitive player who got banned from tournaments and got his prize money taken away.
Well, it's actually a lot more than that. That's one story. But yes, a Hearthstone player. Actually, it wasn't Hearthstone. It was Overwatch. I
No,
think
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was Hearthstone, the card
it
game.
was Overwatch. But yeah. So an Overwatch player that was he's competitive. He plays competitively. He got banned from events hosted by Blizzard, and yeah, so and Blizzard did this because of pressure from the Chinese government because this player in question openly voiced support for the Hong Kong protest movement.
His voicing
And
support. Sorry, I'm just going to remark that his voicing support for the Hong Kong protest movement basically amounts to saying one sentence on one stream. That's it.
right. Well, and there are other examples of this too. But basically, throughout the last week, we've been just getting bombarded essentially with story after story in quick succession. Because another example would have been South Park doing an episode about about Chinese media censorship and control of U.S. industry, and China being banning South Park entirely in their national media because South Park decided to make fun of the Chinese government and talk about these sort of policies that they have. And it was actually the South Park episode, like that was sort of when I first noticed this, but that's when I realized that there was a narrative being pushed by the U.S. government in make popularizing all of these stories all of a sudden at first, which that's sort of what had me first suspicious because usually when a bunch of stories sort of enforcing the same narrative come out at once and are related to the same topic and it had been happening for a while, like this sort of thing had been going on for a while, but then all of a sudden just out of nowhere every media outlet is talking about it and they're all sort of enforcing the exact same talking point. You realize right there something is going on. For some reason or another, the government is coordinating this narrative and trying to push it. And I realized pretty quickly after seeing the South Park episode that what they're doing right now is they're essentially trying to create, in a similar way to how they've managed to acknowledge structural incentives within the state while trying, while studiously subverting the idea that these are innate incentives to political rule, or these are innate problems with political rule, and are instead the problem of deep state actors. And the only way that you could get rid of these deep state actors perverting this otherwise pristine institution is to vote harder. There's sort of a similar thing going on here, where you're seeing the media in mass acknowledging the state's involvement in manipulating the market, because that's essentially what's happening. Is they're acknowledging corporatism, but they've pinned it all on Chinese state-run corporations. So essentially they're acknowledging that the state is influencing the market, but it's only the Chinese government. And if you want to fight the Chinese government, well, then you better support tariffs.
You also see a lot of this in the Trump's rhetoric as well. I really hate to bring up Orange Man just in general because I know it's a very charged thing,
Orange
but
man bad.
Orange Man bad. But anyways, yeah, you always hear about how China is ripping us off, how China is winning in trade deals, which, I mean, first off, only the government can create a trade deal that is win lose. But, anyways, like you can hear a lot about this. It's probably trying to reinforce, as Esso said, the point that China is trying to screw with us. Like they are bad for freedom, bad for democracy, or whatever it is that you're trying to say now. And
Bad for
yeah,
American democracy.
bad for American jobs too. I mean, obviously, they manipulate their economy, don't you know that? Do you know how much government intervention happens in the economy? Oh, and they're also manipulating their currency because we definitely don't have a Federal Reserve, we definitely don't have fiat currency, and we definitely don't have artificially determined interest rates. Nope. It's the Chinese that are doing all these bad things. All of this bad economic news, all of these fake numbers in the economy, like the fake unemployment numbers that are supposed to be like the best unemployment numbers seen in 50 years, that's all because of the Chinese. It's their fault, you see. Never mind the fact that we've had tariffs for several months now, and they've actually cost American jobs, and the jobs that they did, quote unquote, save, cost Americans 800,000 a year per job.
Yeah, the unemployment numbers collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're manipulated because they count individual contracts as jobs being created. But no, it's uh it's the Chinese, definitely.
It's
It's
definitely it's definitely the Chinese,
it's
and
not
obviously like
not structural incentives of the American government. No, it's just the Chinese government manipulating international markets.
because obviously only the Chinese ever manipulates international markets. Wait, what
But
was that we were saying about petrodollar recycling before about artificially increasing the demand for the U.S. dollar? Nah, that doesn't happen.
but
Only
yeah,
China manipulates international markets.
yeah, the thing is with China is that their economy, like the sort of narrative which is also being enforced because there's also this is also being sort of pushed out to the anti-free market crowd. Oh, it's just more profitable to trade in China because they have all this influence over, they have so much money there, they have so much trade. China's economy is pretty much a hollow state, at least in terms of real human action. Their GDP figures are so fake that like most of the units of measurement put out by the Chinese government don't even match up to what their companies are announcing for their product, and don't it doesn't even add up consistently to 100%. Literally, these are mathematically impossible figures being put out by the Chinese government, and then like they're so desperate. Like it's been known for years. They're essentially the Chinese government is building cities that nobody lives in just to inflate their GDP figures in order to attract loans from international banks. It's a debt based economy. There's like no, like I'd say probably I can't really put like an accurate estimate on it, but I'd say it's safe to assume at least a majority of the actual productivity and wealth signals being created by the Chinese economy. It's fake. It doesn't exist. It's a spectrum.
It's what's even funnier is that not only do they build these cities, but they also try to create these massive incentives for people to move into the city. I think I was talking about earlier how they subsidize electricity companies to reduce their prices so ridiculously low so that people will move into there for free electricity, even though the inevitable result of incredibly cheap electricity is that Bitcoin miners move there and
And
other
that's
crypto
and
miners.
that's exactly what's happened. So the Chinese government has gotten, you know, it's a whole new level of woke. Their hollow state is, um, we have just trading in the white market, which is broke. There's woke, which is creating and cementing counter economic networks and infrastructure to subvert the state's ability to continue funding itself. That's woke. And then there's bespoke. The entire legal market framework being so indebted that they're giving away energy subsidies, which you then use to mine Bitcoin and then fuel the counter economy with to undermine the state.
It's even it's even funnier because politicians there and just government officials are corrupt as fuck. It what's funny is like I was reading about the status of cryptocurrency in China, and that although on paper cryptocurrency is dubiously legal, it's like if you have some politician or some police chief in your back pocket, which honestly is not very hard to get. Basically, all they'll do is they'll go up to you saying that, yeah, you got to stop doing this, and then they hold out their hand expecting payment.
And that's exactly how it was towards the end of the Soviet Union as well, which that was Konkin's favorite example of counter economics. It got so bad in the Soviet Union that politicians were trading in the counter economy just to make their ends meet, and that's kind of what we're seeing in China as well. So that's, if anything, that's a pretty good indication of the real wealth in Chinese society.
For sure. I mean, I remember seeing something like even 10 years ago about some guy going around in China asking people if the myths and ideas that people hold about China are true. And perhaps the main thing that Chinese people thought was absolutely ridiculous that Westerners thought about China is the idea that China is a superpower. Even like people who live in big cities like Shanghai or Beijing, the kinds of like economic and technological utopias that they're always projected to be, they're like, wait, people think China's a superpower? Seriously? I think really what's going
Yeah,
on is that,
just just look at Chinese towns and the cities, like even some of their bigger cities. If you look at, their actual districts which people live in, they live in huts. It's like third world living conditions there.
they kind of have
It's
an.
it's clearly not a superpower by any means.
I think what it is that what's going on is that obviously all totalitarian regimes need to put up a facade. In China's case, they have a Potemkin economy, which is largely maintained or almost entirely maintained by government subsidies and government construction projects, endless bridges to nowhere and ghost cities. But the US government is perfectly willing to take it at face value because China's a boogeyman. They're an adversary that must be slain, that must be defeated, even though economics is win-win and only a government can make a trade deal or an economic relationship a win-lose
But
relationship.
just to clear something up, you mentioned earlier China's politicians are corrupt. Did
Mhm.
you mean to use that term, or what did you mean by that?
I meant that they were basically very easy to bribe.
Okay, because that's basically the function of government, is for
Hmm.
these rulers to enrich themselves through the threat of coercion.
Hmm. Although
So,
I typically make a differentiation between politicians who enrich themselves off the back of people and those who are corrupt. Obviously, they're both doing the same thing, except that one is withholding violence as a condition of payment. Obviously, both are morally and ethically incorrect, but I think one
well,
is
it's the
better than
exact
the other.
same thing. It's the exact same thing fundamentally. The only difference is that politicians or the police are directly in your face threatening you and then holding out their hands offering, an alternative.
Mhm.
That's implicit in taxation, in legislative fiat. Pay us and don't do whatever we're telling you to do, or else we're going to use violence against you. So really, there's no difference there between the state functioning business as usual and a bribe.
No, there isn't. Which is, yeah, like one's going to arrest you, the other one won't arrest you if you give them payment. That's just the point I'm trying to make.
Well, that's how the state usually works. So,
Usually, except that taxation is just the price you pay to not be in jail. Here, it's just like they'll throw you in jail for acting a certain way. But anyways, I think we should move on to the next topic. What is the next topic?
well, we have a couple of things that we're considering talking about. We covered all the sort of main issues here.
Yeah, we can talk. Here's something we can talk about the.
The
Well,
debt.
which company? Which company was it that's killing 10,000 jobs?
Oh yeah, I think that was Forever 21. Let
Uh,
me go back and look because yeah, that was a while ago in our DMs here.
yeah. And it wasn't. I know it was not Forever 21, although they are declaring bankruptcy and going to be closing a lot of a lot of stores, a lot of storefronts, and a lot of locations in malls. Which, speaking of which, I'm pretty sure you've seen those articles too, where a lot of malls in America are becoming increasingly desolate and empty, with entire storefronts just being shuttered closed. I haven't
Right.
I haven't been.
Apparently, 4,000 jobs just in New York, their restaurant sector, so to speak, were lost recently.
Yeah, and isn't didn't New York increase their minimum wage to $15?
What a fucking coincidence.
Oh no no no! I'm sure that those are completely different. I'm sure those are completely unrelated.
Yeah, and I can't believe people still fall for this stupid shit where every time the minimum wage goes up, it just so happens a bunch of fucking jobs get lost immediately afterwards. And then people complain about the jobs being lost as if it's not connected. The mainstream media refuses to they studiously avoid the obvious. And then people go around saying, "Well, there's no proof that minimum wage costs jobs."
Oh, I'm sure it's totally a coincidence. I mean, it's not like this exact same thing happened in Seattle too.
And it's not like original proponents of minimum wage laws explicitly conceptualized the idea with the intention of costing jobs. And only recently, by recently I mean within the last 50 years or so, has minimum wage been argued for on the basis that it creates productivity.
Oh God, I still remember that video I made about why we need a $1 million minimum wage, and many of the arguments in that video was just put forward the arguments they make for increasing minimum wage verbatim, and then use it to support a $1 million minimum wage. A lot of them genuinely believe that it will increase jobs somehow. That if we give workers more spending money, they'll spend that money at other stores, and then those stores will be more inclined to expand. Because obviously, in the best case scenario for a minimum wage hike is it won't have an inflationary effect on prices at all. No, that never happens. What's inflation? Inflation? Oh, that's just a spook. Inflation never happens. Can you name one country or one economy ever that was destroyed by inflation? Can you name one?
Here's something you can bring up that will throw Keynesians for a loop immediately. This is actually really the moment that Keynesianism should have died in mainstream prevalence, but no, considering that it perfectly cements the state's interests in its messaging and what its interests are for establishing its socio-political order. Keynesianism remains popular in media and academia because of that. But anyway, the 1971 stagflation in the automobile industry. That should have been the moment Keynesianism died, because according to the Keynesian business cycle, you cannot both have a high growth of unemployment and inflation, because both of those things, you're supposed to create price controls to combat growing unemployment, and you're supposed to raise the minimum wage to combat the devaluing of the dollar according to the Keynesian methodology. So if both happen at once, then that undermines the Keynesian business cycle. That proves that the Keynesian business cycle can't be true. And sure enough, it's happened. So Keynesianism debunked in one single event.
Oh God. Oh no 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 no.
What?
Give me a second here. Okay. Yeah,
What did you?
someone was just trying to dox someone else in the chat.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
I don't freaking know. Like, I noticed I was just idly looking at the chat every now and then. I think it started around like 15 minutes into the stream. They just started talking about like what was his name, LJL, I think.
God damn it!
That guy who like started threatening Dapperton for reasons, and like that started happening, and then Dust Digger tried to dox him, and I was just like, yeah, that's when I started to freak out. I blocked him from my channel, so yeah. Suffice to say,
Yeah,
not very happy about that.
Don't fucking do that. God damn it!
Yeah, seriously, that's not cool ever. I don't care. Seriously, just don't ever. Anyways, I think we should.
It's an intimidation tactic, and especially given the political leanings of people who watch this stream, that's almost the equivalent of just swatting them.
Oh yeah, and almost certainly there's going to be someone who sees that and thinks that we encourage doxing.
Which
Oh God.
obviously we don't. Hence why we banned them. But
Yeah, and I know for a fact that executioners are going to be like, "Oh, Esso was on a stream where someone was doxed."
even more hilariously, Jim might try and say that.
He probably will. But anyways, I think we should move on to the last topic for the night.
All right, sure.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
which is the deficit? The fact that the deficit basically reached $1 trillion, and the UN. That's for the United States, but the UN's deficit is 260 million, which they're even stating openly they're having a quote cash crisis. So the UN is, having instability as well. Even the UN itself is being undermined by all of these counter economies.
The UN is being. Well, I mean, I think it's the same thing that's happening around the world. I mean, if I recall how the UN is funded, is that it's usually part of the budget of its member states, who are all required to chip in at least a little bit in order to keep it funded. And what's probably happening is that there's a lot of economies around the world, especially the big payers like the US, that are experiencing some serious contractions in their government funding and government budgets, that they can't afford to pay as much to the UN. And well, this is how it's manifesting. I mean, as far as I know, the UN does not really collect taxes.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm just kind of reading the chat because
God damn it.
these two accounts look sketchy as fuck. The ones who are sort of playing off of one another.
Yeah, I just blocked him too. Seriously, don't do that.
I don't think they're viewers of yours. I think those guys are glowing.
Probably.
Yeah.
They have the same avatar too, so that's
They just
concerning.
have the generic ANCAP flag avatar. I'd be willing to bet if you check their YouTube channels, they don't have any activity. Those are probably those are probably spoof accounts.
Let me actually go do that right now. Zero subscribers, no videos, no activity whatsoever. Yeah, definitely.
You know, those guys are glowing pretty hard.
Hmm.
It doesn't surprise me they're trying this shit. We've had a couple people come into the Discord server asking sketchy questions, had to ban them in there.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, anyways. So, you're talking about the
Yeah,
UN being a low budget?
I guess they decided that fucking shadow banning our content wasn't enough. Now they got to come and try and start fucking trying to provoke people, and I don't know what they're planning, but yeah, man, we fucking really get under their skin, don't we? Yeah,
I guess,
we're really pissing them off. I guess
like,
we because they started doing this when we were talking about China. Yeah, they must not want us talking about China.
apparently not.
We really pissed them off now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't wait to hear what the potato face crew has to say. That's going to be fun. Now, let's see here. The last thing I want to talk about is the artificial blood.
Oh yeah, two major advancements have been made in genetic experimentation this week. First of all, the creation of synthetic blood, which you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so a bunch of Japanese scientists created in a laboratory a type of artificial blood that at least they say can is better than the real thing and can be injected to anyone with literally any blood type.
That's a pretty big deal.
Oh, extremely. I mean, what's the price that blood goes for on the white markets? Does anyone have any idea?
Oh, there are certain blood types where just an ounce of it's like $800. I think O negative, it can go up to 1,000.
Yeah, that's a fairly rare blood type, isn't it? So you can
Yeah,
imagine that, like, I was talking about this when it was first talked about on, or when the articles were first posted on your channel, that if we can replicate that and make it open source, the amount of money that we as an organization could make giving it or selling it to clinics, hospitals, that sort of thing, as well as the amount of good that would do for anyone to, in theory, be able to make this blood themselves. I think that that would be of tremendous benefit to society as a whole, wouldn't it?
yeah, it would allow people to be able to obtain blood for surgeries and stuff a lot more. You know, that's not going to be blood transfusions aren't going to be as difficult.
Hmm.
So that's going to make surgery less expensive.
It's just generally going to be a. Oh yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say on that, but suffice to say, like the kind of improvements that we're seeing just in like the last 5 years. Let's see, we got CRISPR, we got artificial blood now. Like who else knows what's going to be coming out in just next year? 2020 is going to be a very exciting year, suffice to say.
Yeah, I thought that I'd sent this to you, but apparently I didn't. I'm going to scroll up a little bit, see if I can find it. but essentially a formula had been created to not just simulate the metabolism by manipulating the telomeres of cells in our bodies, but actually just reverse aging, like in general.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's
Yeah.
I haven't looked into that all that much, but reversing the
Well,
aging in cells
yeah,
is pretty much the holy grail of
basically,
genetics.
yeah, it was created through CRISPR, and it was just demonstrated this week. But yeah, it is a formula which can work. I think it's I think it's universal, but don't quote me on that. But that's the other major innovation which came out of this field of research. That's the sort of yeah, that's the sort of, like, I've been saying this for a while now, but there's a revolution going on in in medical research right now because of all these open source methodologies being expanded upon, and all these new um like the barrier of entry for most people to be able to experiment um with information and resources. It has been lowered significantly because they this market basically got their equivalent of 3D printing around 2015, or micro CC machines. And as a result, within just the last 5 years, you're seeing things like synthetic blood being created, and life expectancy being potentially indefinite.
All right. Well, anyways, I think we should wrap this up.
All right. Well, did we get any super chats? You got to read them off if we did.
I didn't see it. I didn't see any.
Okay. Well, I guess with that being the case, yeah, we should probably just end the stream. Perhaps maybe put our PayPal addresses in the chat, or the description, the pinned comment, whatever. We need money, goddammit.
All right. So, anyways, yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
All right.